The part of the brain, there's a study shown that brain scans can predict if teenagers will engage in drug use in the future. So the part of the brain that promotes impulsive risk-taking develops early in teens, while the brain area responsible for the thinking, planning, good judgment, and decision-making, and impulse control is under the most change. So at younger ages, so like our years, like 13 through like 18, our brains are less developed, and so therefore like our thought process and our decision making is less developed than what we would do if we were like 21 and older, because it's more developed and more mature and has more views and understanding of life and how to make more important decisions. Oh yeah, okay, so, and because of that, this lacks of the brain majority teens and preteens lack the ability to control impulses. So new research has shown that drugs affect adolescents' brain in a different way than adults. So we all know that kids think differently, and what we think is how we go. We don't really see two sides to things most of the time. So adults, they have more common sense when it comes to smart decisions and being smarter and making better choices.
Another current event we had was the opioid crisis, and it's claiming lives across the country, and it's taken a particularly sinister turn in the nation's capital. Survey results.
So here's a survey between Minnesota and Eastview, like high school students, on marijuana use. And for the survey for Eastview, it shows that more ninth graders at Eastview use less marijuana compared to the survey for all of Minnesota, but 11th graders use it more frequently at Eastview.
Alright, so this is one of our survey questions. It's would drug prevention programs be effective here at Eastview? And it's comparing males to females. And more males disagreed with the idea, while more females were kind of neutral with it. And then this is when do you primarily use illegal substances? And this graph, besides the people who said they never used it, said they use it with friends. And this just shows how effective like peer pressure is and how big of a role it plays in drug use.
And then this is just a graph of like if you've ever used illegal drugs across the like grade levels at our school, and it really just shows how like as you get older, it's more likely that you're going to use drugs because more people will, and then you succumb to peer pressure, and so it's just kind of a cycle where like the older you get, the more likely you are, and that just kind of is pretty apparent in our survey. And then so here's some like prevention programs and recovery programs for drug use. So Narconon is like a rehab facility, but if you go on their website, there's a lot of like prevention tips and resources, especially if you're like struggling with addiction or drug use, or someone you know is. PACT 360 is really aimed toward teenagers, and it kind of uses like the community to get involved. So they have like people that go out and like give presentations and things like that on drug use. And then NIDA for Teens, so the National Institute on Drug Addiction for Teens, is a website that has like a lot of sources and articles about drug use and kind of like the issues that are going on today with drug use, and like especially like the opioid crisis and everything like that. So that's like a really good website for just learning more information and I don't know, resources again about drug use. Okay, so our contributing factors. So there's family history, which definitely plays a huge role, because if your parents are using, or you're around family members that have used before, like you're kind of desensitized to it more likely, and so you're not going to think like this is bad, and then you're going to be probably more enticed to use drugs. And also it's shown like studies have shown like that addiction kind of is hereditary, like people with addictive personalities, like that gets passed on to other generations. And then mental health issues, which we kind of already talked about how like drugs can either cause them, or using drugs, you use them to cope with the mental health issues that you have. So getting like a good care for your mental health and like having a good support system is really key if you want to stop using or like prevent and using legal drugs. Trauma is another thing. So if you've like been in a traumatic situation, like I mean obviously like war is a big one, because you see a lot of veterans that have turned to drug use to cope with these mental problems that they've come from like their trauma, and even like smaller things like maybe like a divorce or like a breakup. So those can be pretty emotionally tolling, and so people use drugs to cope with that. And then impulse control problems, so that's a big thing that is kind of hard to, you know, there's not like a great solution to that, but it's just like if you're kind of a risk person, then it's kind of hard for you to say no. And that's a big problem with especially teenagers for using illegal drugs.
Some more contributing factors are genetics, kind of like what you said before. It's you have family members who have made a future or past of abusing drugs, you're more likely to probably do so as well. Availability of drugs, kind of like where you can get your drugs. So say like your dad does drugs and you take his stuff, you know, like that's easy to get for you, or you know a cousin, or you know a close friend who knows somebody. But it kind of like goes from there, like who knows who, or what you're dealing with within your family. Social changes, definitely like the environment and the people you hang around with is totally different. So you can go from being a very shy person and not talking to much people, or like a loner, so to speak. And then you move up from there and you would start doing drugs, and then you get involved with those people who may do the same stuff, or may do worse. And then peer influences. I know high schoolers, teenagers suffer through that a lot, with the pressure to be more like what is told to be right as a teenager. So like everyone wants to drink, everyone wants to smoke, so you want to fit in. So we interviewed Officer Plants, and he talked about just like the drug abuse that he sees within Eastview, and like between each grade, and how we should deal with that. And then Officer Porras, he talked about a lot of very good things. He really was keen on how to stay involved and be more active instead of like having, so like he said basically like not having, like having less free time, because in your free time you're more likely to go out and do you know, illegal things with people or yourself. But he was very keen on like staying active, working out, distracting yourself, being a part of the community, volunteering, things like that.
And then we also went downtown Minneapolis to interview Laura, who's a program manager at Minnesota Teen Challenge, and she kind of told us about like the daily life at like a rehab center, and like what she noticed is like the drug addict, like how they like cope with like their addiction. And she said like the only way you can get help is if you want to, like nobody can force you to. And that was something that stuck out to us. And she explained like the most like common drugs like of people that would enter into rehab and the ages.
Okay, so some determinants.
So under risk factors, one of them is the lack of peer refusal skills. So basically just kids are more likely to participate in drug use if their friends are doing it. As you can see from the surveys from before.
Okay, the other one is the lack of information on positive health behaviors. So just not really knowing kind of the negative consequences of using drugs, like not really knowing the benefits of that. So there's that one.
So another risk factor is the pro-use messaging on social media, music, songs, and they do it so much that it kind of becomes normalized, and even romanticize, and so adolescents are more enticed to use drugs.
Okay, so one of the solutions for the risk factors, kind of regarding the peer pressure factor of that, is to teach kids like a lot with like the DP programs, kind of skills and techniques they can use to like say no or get away from the situation, so that they know like when they're in those situations, which they probably will be because it's just the way that it is, that there's ways to like distance yourself from that and not participate in the illegal drug activity. And then another solution would be increased propaganda for anti-drug use. So we see like on Tumblr especially, like drugs are kind of, like Ethan said, romanticized, like they're cool and like they're artsy or whatever. And so like putting a lot more anti-drug use propaganda, like posters, but even like on social media, it would kind of help like denormalize drug use and also create awareness.
And also having like more groups or people to come and teach about drug awareness. So like more information in the media, information in class. So it's good to, even at a younger age, to inform kids about the seriousness of drugs and how harmful they can be, and all the risks of them as well.
One of our protective factors is, like we were saying, like it's important to get yourself involved and to spread awareness of the constant use of illegal drugs.
So another protective factor is opportunities exist for community involvement, which is just be involved in your community, raise awareness of the problem and how serious drug abuse is. And it's important just to be a whole instead of like one individual. You know, one individual can't spread the word as much as a group can.
And another one is cope with stress in a positive way rather than like turning to drugs, which can make the situation even worse and even more stressful for yourself.
So some solutions for protective factors is like a requirement for high school students to do at least one project on substance abuse, and it's so everyone just is familiar with the risk and consequences. So basically what we're doing right now, but required for everyone to like participate in that project. And another one is stress relieving skills or stress management class, and this would give adolescents ideas and strategies for coping with stress and anxiety instead of self-medicating through drugs.
So our best solution is just to get like teenagers like us involved with something. So we think the best way to enforce this would be to have at least one extracurricular activity required to graduate. And studies have been shown that if kids are involved, it decreases drug use and teaches them work ethic, leadership skills.
Okay, so there are a few things that like the individual can do just to prevent drug use, because if you don't do it, then you're not going to influence another person to do it, and so it's not going to create like this big thing. So one of the best things you can do is just say no if someone is trying to tell you to do drugs, or you're at like a party or something and someone's offering you them. Just say no, because honestly, like being high for like an hour or something is not worth the risk of like getting suspended from like your sport or like getting in legal trouble or anything. So that's one of the best things that you can do, is just say no. Another thing you can do is tell someone, like this is like especially if it's like becoming a real problem and like you're addicted, or someone you know is addicted, like it's really key to tell someone, because really it could just be saving someone's life, because like the graph shows